Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Aintika and today I am going to discuss the literary devices used in the poem A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945, written by Vikram Seth for my ICSE students of class 9. Let's get started. Now, I am going to give a brief introduction about this topic and then move on to discussing the literary devices. Okay. This poem is based on Dr. Hachiya Michihiko, the director of Hiroshima Hospital, who was near the atomic bomb explosion on August 6, 1945. His diary, named as the Hiroshima Diary, gives us details of the 56 days following the blast, therefore documenting his efforts to help the survivors. Now, this diary was initially published in the Japanese medical journal named Taiheisin Igaku from the year 1950 to 1952. It then got the attention of Dr. Warner Wells, who was an American physician living in Japan at that time. With the help of a Japanese person named Nilsuke Fuji, he translated the diary into English in the year 1955, therefore bringing Dr. Hachiya Michihiko's first-hand account to the wider audience all over the world. Now, what are literary devices? Literary devices are tools or techniques that writers use to enhance or improve their writing and therefore convey their meaning and create specific effects. These tools or literary devices help make the text more engaging, impressive, and memorable. Some of the literary devices that you may have learned or used so far are metaphor, simile, alliteration, hyperbole, juxtaposition, etc. Okay. Now, let us look at the very first line of the poem. The morning stretched calm, beautiful, and warm. It is an example of personification, as we know that personification refers to giving human qualities to non-human things, right? So, the very first line of the poem is an example of personification because the morning here is given human-like qualities, as if the time of the day is a living being and it is stretching itself casually, right? So, by giving the morning human-like qualities, the poet emphasizes how peaceful and relaxed the atmosphere is, almost as if nature itself is leisurely waking up. This line is also an example of imagery because it creates a vivid picture of the morning, appealing to the senses of touch and sight because it refers to a calm, beautiful and warm morning. Next line. Sprawling half-clad, I gazed out at the form of shimmering leaves and shadows. We know that this line is an example of juxtaposition. Now, juxtaposition refers to placing two things side by side to highlight their differences or to create contrast. For example, comparing light and dark to show how different they are. In the poem, the phrase sprawling half-clad in the second line shows the speaker's casual posture and partly dressed state, okay, indicating that he feels totally relaxed, unhurried and at ease in this peaceful setting. This relaxed position contrasts with the more formal or tense situations the speaker will face afterwards in the poem, therefore emphasizing or focusing more on the current calmness or calmness of the present time. In this line, the phrase shimmering leaves and shadows is an example of visual imagery because it creates a strong visual image of nature using descriptive words like shimmering to suggest the way light dances across the leaves. And the word shadows adds depth and contrast to the scene. This vivid imagery helps the reader to picture the calm and serene surroundings in their mind. Now, in the same phrase, shimmering leaves and shadows is an example of alliteration, and we know that alliteration is the repetition of same consonant sound at the beginning of closely connected words, and writers use alliteration to create rhythm and focus attention or enhance the mood of writing. Okay, so here the repetition of the S sound in shimmering leaves and shadows gives the line a smooth flowing rhythm that matches the peaceful nature of the scene. It also strengthens the feeling of peace and calm, making the reader feel like the scene is happening slowly and thoughtfully. Next, the phrase "a strong flash" creates a clear image of a bright, intense light. The word strong highlights the power of the flash, making it more striking for the speaker as well as the reader. This description appeals to the sense of sight and therefore makes the moment feel sudden and vivid for the speaker as well as the reader. Next line. Suddenly a strong flash, then another, startled me. I saw the old stone lantern brightly lit. Magnesium flares. So the first part of this phrase is an example of symbolism. We know that symbolism refers to using one thing to represent something else. For example, a red rose might symbolize love. Okay, similarly, here the word flash can symbolize the sudden and destructive force of the atomic bomb. It is not just a physical light, but also represents the devastating moment that changes everything in an instant. Now, in the same line, suddenly a strong flash, then another, startled me. The phrase startled me is an example of alliteration. Here, the repetition of the S sound in startled me draws attention to the reaction of the speaker. The smooth flow of these words contrasts with the sharpness of the flash, which can subtly enhance the feeling of surprise, making it feel more abrupt and noticeable. Now, in this line, we can also notice a sudden shift in tone. The calm mood changes quickly to one of shock and alarm with the use of the phrase strong flash. This shift marks the beginning of chaos and fear. So, this part of the phrase, the world collapsed in timber and debris, dust swirled around me, is an example of imagery. The words timber, debris and dust swirled work together to paint a vivid picture in the reader's mind. The image of wood breaking apart, rubble flying through the air and dust swirling around creates a sensory experience for the reader, therefore making them feel like they are right in the middle of the destruction. It appeals to the sense of sight and touch, bringing the scene to life. Next, while I debated it, the roof, the walls, and as it seemed, the world collapsed in timber and debris. Dust swirled around me. In this line, the phrase, while I debated it, is an example of enjambment. We know that enjambment means when a sentence or thought continues from one line to the next without a pause. Okay, this can create a flowing, connected feel. In this case, the sentence flows across lines without a pause. While I debated it, the roof, the walls, and as it seemed, the world collapsed in timber and debris. Okay, so this creates a sense of continuous action. Just as the collapse is happening, there is no break or pause. Similarly, it all happens quickly and relentlessly. The idea of the collapse spilling from one line to the next mirrors or shows us how the destruction feels like an unstoppable force. Next, in the same line, the phrase "the world collapsed" is an example of hyperbole. We know that hyperbole is when something is exaggerated to make a point or create an effect. Okay, for example, I am so hungry I could eat a horse. Okay, do you understand? Now, so the phrase "the world collapsed" is an example of hyperbole. Here the speaker isn't literally saying that the entire world fell apart, but it feels that way to them in that moment. Alright, this exaggeration emphasizes the intensity and overwhelming nature of the situation. It also suggests that everything the speaker knows is falling apart and their sense of reality is therefore shattering. Next, in the same line, the phrase "the world collapsed" is an example of personification. It gives the world an active role in the destruction, as if it is a living thing that is collapsing on its own. This makes the disaster feel even bigger, as if it is not just the roof and walls falling down, but the entire structure of existence. Personifying the world this way adds a sense of power and inevitability to the destruction. Next, in the same line, the phrase "and debris, dust swirled around me" is an example of alliteration. Here, the repetition of the D sound in debris and dust creates a rhythm that mimics the sound of the crash and swirling debris. The repetition makes the scene feel more chaotic and loud, therefore adding to the intensity of the moment. It pulls the reader into the action, helping them almost hear the sound of destruction. Next, again in the same line, the word "swirled" is an example of onomatopoeia. Now, onomatopoeia refers to words that imitate sounds. For example, clap, clash, crash, etc. As it suggests the motion of dust in a way that makes it feel alive. It is not just dust flying around, it's moving in a specific swirling way that makes the scene more vivid and dynamic. Though the word "swirled" does not exactly imitate a sound, it creates a sense of movement that contributes to the chaotic feeling of the moment. Next, in the garden now, and weird, my drawers and undershirt disappeared. So, students, please notice that this line starts with a dash. This dash at the beginning of the line signals a sudden change in setting or focus. Therefore, it implies that the speaker's awareness or perception is shifting quickly, which could indicate confusion or disorientation amidst the chaos. Okay. Now, it also serves to emphasize the unexpected nature of the events. Now, the word "weird" is an example of colloquialism. Colloquialism refers to informal language used in everyday conversations. Okay, for example, we sometimes use "gonna" instead of "going to." Right? That is why we may say that the use of the word "weird" is an example of colloquialism, as if the speaker is reflecting on the bizarre nature of the situation in a somewhat detached or surprised manner. Okay, it adds to the feeling that the speaker is in shock and still processing things as they come. Next, a splinter jutted from my mangled thigh. This phrase vividly describes a painful and graphic injury. That is why it is an imagery. Now, the word "jutted" evokes a sharp, protruding image, making the injury feel immediate and real. The term "mangled" conveys the severity of the injury, giving the reader a clear sense of physical damage, right? In the same line, the phrase "my mangled thigh" is an example of alliteration. Okay, here the repetition of the M sound in mangled and my helps to emphasize the traumatic nature of the injury. It creates a rhythm that accentuates the disturbing reality of the moment. Now, in this line, the vivid description of injury evokes as in makes us feel pity or sympathy, right? That is why it is an example of a literary device called pathos. Now, pathos spells as P-A-T-H-O-S. It can be pronounced as pathos or pathos, however you please, both are correct. Now, we know that pathos is a literary device that is used as a method of persuading or evoking emotions, as in it makes us feel various kinds of emotions, especially pity or sadness. For example, an advertisement showing sad animals in need of homes. Pathos is used to make the reader feel the intensity of the scene. Okay, so the words mangled and splinter are strong, with the ability to make people feel uncomfortable and deeply emotional, overall creating a sense of pain and discomfort. That is why this pulls the reader more into the emotional turmoil the speaker is experiencing. Next, my right side bled, my cheek was torn, and I dislodged detachedly a piece of glass, all the time wondering what had come to pass. Now, in this line, the phrase "and I dislodged detachedly" is an example of alliteration, right? Because here the repetition of the D sound in dislodged and detachedly adds a rhythmic effect to the line, therefore making it more engaging. Now, similarly, in this line, the phrases "my right side bled" and "my cheek was torn" are examples of imagery, as they create vivid pictures in the reader's mind, appealing to the senses, especially sight and touch. Next, the phrase "dislodged detachedly" is an example of juxtaposition, because it contrasts with the more intense emotions of injury, therefore showing a sense of detachment or calm in the midst of pain. In the same line, the phrase "wondering what had come to pass" is an example of internal conflict, because here the speaker mentions this phrase to show his confusion and emotional turmoil as he tries to understand what has happened. Next, the repetition of the W sound in the questions "where was" and "where are" gives the line a sense of rhythm that mirrors the speaker's frantic searching and adds to the sense of urgency in the situation. That is why "where was" and "where are" examples of alliteration. Next, "where was my wife?" Alarmed, I gave a shout. "Where are you, Yecko-san?" My blood gushed out. Now, in this line, these two questions, "where was my wife" and "where are you, Yecko-san," are examples of rhetorical question. And we also know that a rhetorical question is asked for effect, not to get the answer, right? So here, these questions show the speaker's panic and fear. The repetition of the question emphasizes how urgently the speaker is trying to find his wife in this chaotic situation. Now, in the same line, the word "gushed" can be seen as an onomatopoeic word, as it imitates the sound of blood flowing quickly. It makes the scene feel more intense and real, therefore allowing the reader to almost hear and feel the blood rushing out. Now, in the same line, the word "gushed" can be seen as an onomatopoeic word, as it imitates the sound of blood flowing quickly. It makes the scene feel more intense and real, therefore allowing the reader to almost hear and feel the blood rushing out. Next, in the same line, the phrase "my blood gushed out" is an example of imagery, because it creates a vivid image of the speaker's injury and pain. Here, the word gushed suggests the blood is flowing quickly and in large amounts, highlighting the severity of the injury and the life-threatening situation. Next, the artery in my neck, scared for my life, I called out, panic-stricken, to my wife. Now, the question at the beginning of the line, the artery in my neck, is a rhetorical question that the speaker asks himself in a moment of panic. The question shows the speaker's fear and realization of how serious his injury is. It also expresses his shock and horror as he tries to understand the severity of his condition. Now, in the same line, the question, the artery in my neck, gives a clear, vivid image of a critical body part being injured. Therefore, it is an example of visual imagery or imagery. Right? Now, this also creates a sense of danger and adds to the gravity of the situation. Now, the image makes the reader understand that the speaker is in immediate danger of losing his life. Now, in the same line, the phrases scared for my life and panic-stricken create an emotional reaction in the reader, making us feel the speaker's terror. These phrases make it clear that the speaker is not only physically hurt but also emotionally overwhelmed by the danger they are in. Next, in the same line, the phrase panic-stricken is an example of pacing. And we know that pacing is a literary device that refers to the speed at which the story unfolds. Okay, now there are two types of pacing, quick pacing and slow pacing. So we may say that the phrase panic-stricken slows down the rhythm. That is why it is an example of pacing, adding to the sense of heightened motion. Alright, now it also suggests that the speaker is in a frantic, almost slow motion moment where he realizes the full extent of the danger he finds himself in. Next, pale, blood-stained, frightened Yecko-san emerged, holding her elbow. Now, the words pale, blood-stained and frightened create a vivid image of Yecko-san. Therefore, these are examples of imagery. Now, these words describe her physical appearance as well as her emotional state, therefore making it easy for the readers to picture her as someone in distress. Now, the image of herself being pale and bloodstained also shows that she is hurt and suffering, just like her husband, the speaker. Now, in the same line, the phrase holding her elbow is an example of imagery because it shows Yecko-san trying to support or steady herself, which makes her seem fragile. Now, it shows that even moving takes effort, therefore highlighting her pain and vulnerability. This description creates a clear picture of her struggle and emotions. The phrases blood-stained and frightened are examples of pathos because they evoke sympathy for Yecko-san. These phrases show how badly she has been affected by the event and make the reader feel her fear and suffering. So, in simpler words, these phrases heighten the emotional tension in the scene, especially after the speaker's own sufferings. Now, these descriptions of blood-stained and frightened help reveal Yecko-san's state of mind as well as her physical condition. She is not only injured but also terrified, which makes her more relatable and humanizes the situation. Therefore, the reader can sense her fear and pain, which deepens the emotional impact of the moment. That is why it is an example of characterization. Characterization refers to the way a writer shows what a character is like through his actions, words, thoughts, and appearance. Next, "Will be fine," I urged. "Let's get out quickly." Now, in this line, the phrase "let's get out quickly" is an example of direct address, and we know that direct address is a literary device that refers to a direct address to someone or something, often used to make the message feel personal. Alright, now, so here the speaker is addressing Yecko-san directly, urging her to move and leave that place. This creates a sense of urgency and immediacy in the scene, highlighting or focusing more on the speaker trying to escape the dangerous situation. Now, in the same line, the short abrupt phrases "will be fine" and "let's get out quickly" are examples of pacing because they create a fast pace reflecting the urgency of the situation. Now, the quick dialogue mirrors the panic and the need for swift action, therefore making the scene feel tense and immediate. Next, stumbling to the street, we fell, tripped by something at our feet. I gasped out when I saw it was a head. Now, in this line, the words like stumbling, fell, and tripped create a strong image of the speaker and Yecko-san trying to escape. Therefore, these words are examples of imagery. Now, these physical actions show the chaos and confusion of the moment. In the next line, the word head adds a chilling image suggesting a severed head, which shocks the reader and heightens the tension. Now, the discovery of the head hints at the brutality or violence that has occurred. Therefore, it is called foreshadowing, and we know that foreshadowing is a literary device that gives hints or clues suggesting something bad is about to happen in the story or in the poem, right? Now, it suggests that the speaker and Yecko-san are in a serious, life-threatening situation and foreshadows that the chaos around them may involve more horror or tragedy.